So we're back together talking about integration, and this time we're going to talk really specifically about video integration. And video integration over time has presented some challenges. We talk about ONVIF. What is ONVIF?
ONVIF is a specification that tells me how to send my video to you and tells you how to call it from me and to get that information from me.
So it's a common video language.
Correct.
How does it help in this, when we're talking about integration, how does it help all the players from the consumer, the guy who's at the end looking at the video and using it, to the integrator, the guy who has to plug it all in the field,
right.
And from a development standpoint, how does it help?
It gives me as, say for instance, a buyer, a user of the system, gives me the flexibility to choose best of breed brands to implement the solutions that I'm looking for in my system. I'm no longer tied to a specific company and the way that they communicate between their devices. I can now have a common language of communication between multiple manufacturers and pull those all together in one system. And maybe over here I want one manufacturer's device because it accomplishes a very specific function that I need, and over here I have something else. I can pull those all into the central management system and view them and control them independently because ONVIF has given me a baseline of communication for that.
So that's the end user perspective. What about, and that probably bleeds over into the integrator and the dealer as well.
Sure.
It allows them some flexibility, makes their life a little easier when mixing some of that different product into the same right. system. Right. And from a development standpoint, how does it help you from a development standpoint?
Allows me to do the development one time. Rather than implementing a solution for this particular end device and this particular end device from another manufacturer or whatever, I have one development solution that all of these systems can now actually function with. So when I implement the work, we all know that labor is our most expensive resource. I can do the work once and I gain the benefit of all of the other scenarios that are utilizing the same system.
So when we do direct integrations where a manufacturer on one side of this or the other develops a communicator between a camera, say, and a piece of software at the head end, ONVIF helps that out a lot because effectively it's a common language, it stays a common language, and when I change a camera, when a guy who makes a camera and does something to their camera, it continues to basically create the same kind of video output that, as a software manufacturer, I would recognize.
Right, so if both devices are ONVIF conformant, and I want to bring in a third device that's ONVIF conformant, they all speak to each other the same language and they're able to communicate. Whereas if I did a direct driver with a particular manufacturer and I brought in another one, that would not be able to communicate in that sense.
So long term, that would create a bit of a challenge because every time something changed in any one of those devices, I would have to rewrite that direct integration.
You have the potential of going back and having to address some issues, yes.
There's a plus to all this, and that is because this standard is a little different. It allows for a lot of flexibility and a lot of change into the future. Can you talk about the difference that ONVIF allows for when it comes to changes in future feature sets?
Yeah. So the guys that developed I guess the core structure of ONVIF and the way and its approach introduced this new concept called profiles. And profiles are, I guess you would call it the what of what is being created, whereas standard is usually managing the how of communication between 2 points. The profiles introduce this concept of what. And when someone talks of profile S is the most common one within ONVIF, and when someone talks of profile S, we know that that is a very, very specific set of features. It doesn't talk about the how, although that's buried in the depths of it. It talks about the how. But more importantly is the what features are exposed by this specific profile. So when someone asks me, are you profile S compliant? I am absolutely confident to be able to say I have these 5 features implemented because these are the 5 features that are required by Profile S.
And Profile S is probably the first
Yes.
of many to come,
Yep.
correct? And Profile S was specifically about the basics of video, which was getting video from point A to point B and being able to recreate it without, as you said before, diminishing the quality of it or
Right.
reducing the quality of it.
Right.
What else did Profile S cover?
So it first and foremost pulls in auto discovery, and that's the idea that if I have a Profile S compliant camera and a Profile S system, the system will be able to find that camera out on the network without the camera ever specifically being programmed to talk to it.
So with a test tool,
Yeah.
from an integrator standpoint, when I plug a new camera into my system, the system then knows if I tell it to go out and look for devices, it can identify devices that are ONVIF without having to do anything at the camera level to prompt that connection.
Correct. So auto discovery is one. Of course, live video. Once I've got that communication link between the cameras, because I've discovered it, I can do live video. I can do basic configuration.
Configuration is
such as frame rate, resolution,
bit rates, what we
right.
talked about with being an important thing.
Right, as well. We can do control, PTZ control of moving cameras. And that's what they call a conditional item, in the sense that if it implements PTZ commands, that it's able to control those.
So it says, you're a camera, yes, I'm a camera. The next question is, if you're a camera, do you have PTZ function?
Right.
Yes or no? So it would engage that
Right.
capability if the device had it.
Correct, correct. And then, of course, events, an eventing mechanism in it so that you can get some basic events when things happen on that device.
So motion detection,
Right.
Contact closures that might feed to the camera, or loss of video signal, or any of those kind of common things that occur at the far end at the device at the outskirts.
Correct, correct.
That was step one. That's the foundation Profile S. What basically is coming in the near future, and then what is scheduled out further than that?
Sure. So Profile S, those are the 5 things that are required in Profile S. There's a lot more extensive feature sets, things like metadata, things like expanding events lists and auxiliaries, audio, all of those kind of things are covered in the Profile S specification. Beyond that, as we move forward, H.265 is the data compression algorithm that's now expanding into our industry. And
that helps by significantly reducing bit rate
right.
across the network and storage requirements while maintaining the quality of the image.
Yes, that's correct. And because the Profile S was originally developed prior to H.265 ever being released, they've now expanded that to Profile T, and Profile T covers H.265 as well as some additional other things that are being covered there.
As I understand it, correct, there is some thought of bringing some other systems, I don't want to say third-party systems, but some things into this integration tool or this integration language outside of video. What are some of those things that you see happening on the horizon?
Right, so in security, we of course go well beyond video. We talk about access control, intrusion, fire, and communications. Profile A is out there today, and it is the access control profile per se, to where it can manage doors and do all of those kinds of things. So that's one that's currently existing, and of course they're constantly looking at adjacent markets, whether building automation or other kinds of markets make sense to pull into the ONVIF coverage.
Long term, what are the benefits that you see of this from both sides? I mean, from the consumer side as well as from a guy who's forced to develop these integrations. What do you see long-term benefit-wise?
Well, I think what you see is the trends. We mentioned that the Internet of Things is the common trend of the world today. And as we go over that, that's based on a lot of common standards, the common standard of IP, the Internet protocol, and the Internet being the baseline of all of that. Most devices and utilities are trending towards being smart devices as an internet device on the edge. A lot of intelligence is going to the edge to where they're making decisions in the devices themselves and then turning around and just reporting it back to the systems. So you start talking about devices actually being to intercollaborate and communicate with each other. You talk about systems being able to control those devices. And what you're finding is that there's more and more need for that kind of interaction and integration across all of these different devices and systems.
Collaboration is kind of a better word for this as it gets to be. It's not just systems talking together, but it's actually devices across systems talking together.
And working together intelligently, because they all have processors on board now to make them smart, and they can intelligently collaborate and work together to enhance the user's experience of a solution in their market.
All that's good comes with things that are a bit of a challenge.
Sure.
Can we talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we face with this ONVIF Profile S, Profile A, Profile T, so on and so forth? What are the challenges that you foresee for the future?
Well, I think the biggest challenge that we want to be open about is the fact that the ONVIF consortium is a group of a lot of different companies that have come together to put down this standard and to come up with a way of collaborating in a cohesive and common way. But there's always that bad guy who comes in and doesn't want to follow the rules. And unfortunately, the way ONVIF was originally developed is it's a self-policing system. And so it's very easy for a non-conformant guy to come in and say he's conformed and to give ONVIF a bad name. And I think ONVIF has gotten a bad rap over the years because of some non-conformances. The market ultimately weeds those out. And I think today we've stabilized. ONVIF has been very good in updating their test tool to make sure that that test tool is validating cameras and devices, all different types of devices and systems, to make sure that they're compliant. And so we've kind of overcome that hump. There are still those that have negative perceptions of ONVIF. But I think we've overcome it pretty well, and moving forward, ONVIF really has the ability to take a hold and run in terms of a baseline of collaboration across devices and really get integration as a mindset across not only manufacturers, but the users as well.
Industry, and even across industries, it sounds like. In closing, I want to make sure that we're really clear on benefits that everybody in the equation get out of this. Right. So can you just go back and touch on those couple of items?
Sure. So I think the greatest benefit is the once and done kind of mindset, right? When I go as a manufacturer or as an integrator and I develop this integration to the ONVIF Profile S, anybody who is aware of Profile S expectations knows what to expect in terms of a feature set. And as a developer, I know that I'm doing it and I'm once and done for any manufacturer who wants to come in and develop against it, okay? Now, once I've done that development, of course, if I want to add new features, it's new development.
Or it's a new device that has a feature that an old device might not have.
Right, right. So if I'm implementing a new feature on a new or old device, it's new development. But if I have implemented a particular feature on one device, the expectation is that it would work with any ONVIF compliant device.
So benefit is huge long-term cost of ownership benefit.
Correct.
Meaning that every time I bring a new device to the table, anytime I need to switch a device out that's in the field already, I'm not having to go back and look at a delay in development of a software mechanism to make things in the system talk to each other.
Correct.
And from the standpoint of a field level person in my world, that's a huge plus, because that allows me to upgrade systems and move in a step-by-step fashion versus I can upgrade, but I can't do that until the next guy upgrades that I'm integrated with. It allows me to do that in a more favorable fashion to make things work together. So I think that ONVIF, from my standpoint, has evolved a long way, and it's become an extremely helpful tool. And with that advent of once and done, that's got to be a big plus for the people that are using and paying for these integrations that are becoming far more common.
Absolutely.